carved your path into consulting after MBA.
Right.
And a lot of people in India are even like not considering MBA as a good option.
I would not do an MBA, for sure. I would not do an MBA.
Consulting is dying or automated because AI has data of consulting for years.
Right. I would say consulting is not dying. Consulting is just become.
It's important for us to learn the 6-step security process when you're building stuff. Can you share it? Today we are in heart of Silicon Valley. We have someone who has lived in the last 10 years in the US, 8 years in Silicon Valley. He has seen Silicon Valley as epitome of tech in the last 8 years to epitome of AI, and also most importantly, epitome of cybersecurity to epitome of cybersecurity plus AI. He has seen how Silicon Valley has evolved when the housing crisis was like, it was $5,500 for an apartment to right now it's $3,000 you can get an apartment. He has lived through all of his important life. And right now what we see from these high packages in the Valley, for example, 100 million to Meta's super intelligence lab, that you are actually paid for not the amount of hard work you do, how much rare your skills are, how rare you are. So I let Nishant introduce himself. He has also been labeled visionary leader in technology and innovation by Economic Times.
Thank you so much, Arnoor, for inviting me. And it's been a pleasure being here. Introduction mein to I would just say that, 11 plus years in cybersecurity now. And I've seen that whole landscape of compliance evolving from doing compliance from Excel sheets to now having some automated tools doing that. And it's been a pleasure being here. And it's been my honor to also be in the Silicon Valley and see this whole landscape.
Excellent. So first of all, I want to know about how Silicon Valley has evolved right in front of your eyes. Like, why is that, like, even though everyone young out there from 18 to 24 want to move to Silicon Valley, but housing prices are still lower than what it used to be in 2018?
Absolutely, yeah. So I think when I moved here in 2018, that time my rent for one bedroom apartment was $5,500, by the way. And and the fun thing is that was the original price of that apartment was around $7,000, and they gave the apartment in below poverty line. So that's why I got it in $5,500.
Oh,
otherwise, it was like way more.
One bedroom
apartment, downtown San Francisco. That's how expensive it was.
At the time I used to read the news, San Francisco is the most expensive city in the US to live, more than New York City.
Yes.
Right now it's New York, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, how the landscape changed was because when COVID happened, most of these companies started, shifting to other cities because, so San Francisco, if you'll see, is like 7 by 7, right? You cannot expand horizontally. So that's why, you see all like skyscrapers, because you're only allowed to expand vertically. So that's why the prices, started, increasing, and then nobody was coming to the office. So everyone was doing work from home. And that's the reason why when the company started moving, so people started moving out. And when people started moving out, that's when the housing crashed. And it turns out that the $7,000 or $5,000 or $6,000 apartment now, it's like a $3,000 or $3,500 apartment. So that's an interesting landscape down there.
What was the most unconventional path that led you to cybersecurity and AI? Was there a specific moment you realized that cybersecurity is for me, or like it was planned?
I'll take you to a little bit of the history then. So I was born and raised in India. And from there, I started Lucknow. Lucknow, that's my hometown. And then I worked in Delhi for 4 years. And I was working in security. Back then, I was working in network security. So in HCL Technologies. So what happened was that, I was working in that, but I did not know that cybersecurity or compliance is also a domain. Because if you see, people who do BTech in India, we have IT or CS or mechanical, civil, we didn't have like, compliance as a separate entity or a separate branch there, right? So I did that. And then when I came to the US, that's when I realized that the work that I was already doing in India, that sort of falls under the cybersecurity domain. So I was like, you know what, why not expand that? And that is the reason why then I started learning what all, things come in cybersecurity. And that's when I ended up into compliance, that, okay, in compliance, you will know the company inside out holistically, like you'll get a broader picture of it. And that is what interested me. And that's, you could say it's like sort of an unconventional path from that aspect. But yeah, that was how, I ended up up into compliance.
So you got into compliance before doing, your master's in US.
Yes.
Oh wow!
Yes.
And then you came for masters in security.
I came to do, yes. So it was MBA in data analytics and MS in information systems. So I had a lot of courses that were into security back then.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then how did you shape your path into the consulting route? Because a lot of people are even now talking that consulting is dying or automated because AI has data of consulting for years.
Right.
So that's why it's going to be automated to the level that, oh, if 10 years of consulting is similar,
Right.
why not you automate it?
Yeah, I would say consulting is not dying. Consulting is just becoming more efficient and more automated, right? If you are, let's say, a company and I come to audit you, and I'm coming to audit you since the last 10 years, right? Now imagine, all of this information, if it gets fed in a bot, the bot would already know that 11th year, what are you going to talk about your company, right? So then it makes things like more interesting and more, efficient, right? For the auditor's perspective and from your perspective also, because you would just say that, whatever has been audited for my company so far and whatever has not changed, that is going to be the same. So it sort of, reduces your problem from like, the aspect that you don't have to show me the evidences, you don't have to speak for the things that you've already spoken. And now as an auditor, it sort of, reduces my job because I already know what you're going to say because that's the same thing that you have been telling, right? So I would say, consulting is not dying. It is becoming more automated. And it's getting, we are in a really interesting landscape, Harnoor. I would say that, every week I'm seeing there are at least 10 to 15 new AI tools that I see that, okay, this tool came in for this tool came in for this. All of that is really good, by the way, really awesome and interesting. But maybe for the startup founders that you were mentioning before, just a learning thing would be that keep security as your center point and then try to build things. I would say you'll go, a long way for sure.
Excellent. And here comes the important question again, like you carved your path into consulting after MBA.
Right.
And a lot of people in India are even like not considering MBA as a good option now.
Right.
And what decisions you would take differently now that you took in the past? That was like guaranteed. MBA was considered so good.
I would not do an MBA for sure. I would not do an MBA. Back in India, I used to read a lot, by the way, and I was reading this book of Samir Kamath. The book's name was Beyond the MBA Hype. That was a Samir Kamath. So I was reading this book, and that is what sort of, made me more interested towards MBA. I did that, but then, the landscape always changes. Back in those times, maybe MBA was, okay, it's like a, bougie job there and a posh job there. But now, if you ask me now, I would not do an MBA for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, I'll probably try to develop one skill and be an expert in that, whatever it is.
So now I think the path of consulting was like, MBA, karke, like, you become a consultant.
Right.
So what path is coming out? Because you have been a consultant for so many years.
Right.
So what is the new path of becoming consultant you see in the tech world without MBA?
Yeah, you become expert in any one thing, right? And you just have your presentability out there and you're a consultant, right? I mean, the prestigious trio, Bain, Boston Consulting, and what was the third one? Bain, Boston, and
BCG.
So Boston Consulting, Bain and Company, and McKinsey, right? McKinsey. So the prestigious trio, even they now I am seeing they are not, needing an MBA, that you should have an MBA from Ivy League. No, it's not like that. If you just are expert into one field, they would probably just hire you and probably pay you really well in that field, right? For example, cybersecurity or compliance, you do not need an MBA. You just need to know how to audit a company's system inside out. That is what you just need to know. That is why I say that build one skill and be expert into that, and that is your way through, not an MBA for sure.
Wow. So in this field, like cybersecurity and AI, what's the biggest misconception people have out there?
Okay, yeah, interesting. So I think the biggest misconception would be people think that AI is really fast and really secure. Well, it is really fast, but not really secure because as I was mentioning earlier, that we do a lot of vibe coding in AI, right? That vibe coding, you would have to see that if, that is secure or not. Because if you're trying to build something from vibe coding, you have to check your code is secure or not, your libraries are secure or not, your proper encryptions or not. All of those things you need to check, because if you do not check, all of these code becomes a product, right? And that product becomes vulnerable. Then you have a lot of vulnerabilities in your product. So that's the reason why this is the biggest misconception, I would say, that AI is really secure. It is not that secure right now.
And it has to be, as you said, it has to be the first thing you consider when you're shipping your product out.
It is the first thing. Make security the center of your product and you would be okay.
For all the young people out there who are like in 1824, majority shaping their career right now, they want to target the skills that are rare. And cybersecurity is one of them, which can, lead to maybe recession-proof market. And I have seen a lot of security engineers who have like specific experiences. Sure. You are the one who has the wider range of experience. For example, you have worked in consulting, you have met so many CEOs like Uber and like AWS CEO. You have interacted and done auditing for them. This is the highest level of security engineer I am meeting. It's an honor for me. I want to learn from you, first of all, what makes your work rare and important as compared to other security engineers out there. What's the difference?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, I think when you are doing cybersecurity and when you're especially doing compliance part of it, right, audit part of it, you would have to meet to the highest level of person, because that is the only person who would know everything inside out about the company, right? So that's the reason why the part of my job is to meet a lot of these CISOs, which is Chief Information Security Officer, CISO, meeting them and asking them about what is going on inside the company. And then I think you did also mention that what is that thing that makes it rare, right? I mean, cybersecurity, if you see, is a rare skill, but when you mix cybersecurity with AI, it's rarest of the rare. That's what it becomes, right? And that is the reason why I think we are in the interesting landscape, I say. And for all the students or all of your audience that are watching, I would say that you should definitely pursue this career, because this is definitely a recession-proof market, right? You'll not be out of job, I can guarantee you, if you have cybersecurity plus AI, embedded in your resume for sure.
Absolutely. And like, especially how important these auditing is, people should know. So you have worked for consulting out of, your 8-year experience in the US, 6 years in consulting. Consulting is of so many types, like strategic consultant, technologist consultant, but you are under the category of security consultant and or auditor. So your goal is to go to a company like Uber, AWS, making sure that every stack is secure. A good example is like, a few months ago, I was seeing some, some countries' government data on GitHub. Like, I could see that some of my friends told me that on GitHub, you can go to their commits and accidentally someone pushes their API key. Sometimes they push their, email, phone number of government people, which is insane. And like, for that, you have to, it's a hard work to go to that commit. GitHub commit it stays online, GitHub or Bitbucket, whatever people are using. And it's really important that each part is secure. For example, when I was working at Microsoft or any big tech, Microsoft, NCR, Panasonic, all three companies I have worked, security works in a way that, let's say I push my code, let's say accidentally I push, let's say you are my teammate, I push your phone number, email, there will be security at pull request that it doesn't push through. It will not even let me commit. Next security will be, well, it is going to be deployed or like, let's say deployed to beta releases. It will not go through. Next, third will be deployed to the whole world. It will not go through. So these three parts of security is important, so you don't leak important information. And in many ways, so what it's needed as an auditor, that you check all three parts, and how do you check it in other companies you visit?
Absolutely. Good question. And thank you for calling that out, because that's the most important thing. When, as an auditor, when we go in, change management, all of this, by the way, comes into change management control. Change management is the first thing that we like to cover, because that is the most important thing. That is the backbone of your company. If that is sorted, I feel like half of the job is done. So there are a lot of controls when we have to audit, right? In compliance and audit, there are around, there are multiple frameworks. So let's say on an average, 80 to 100 controls you audit. This change management is one of the controls. So let's say, if I go to a company, how do I start this process, right? I'll ask that, do you do change management? Of course, the answer would be yes, because most of the companies do that, right? So they'll be, yeah, we do change management. How many types of changes are there? Let's say the company says we have 3 types of changes. We do application change, we do infrastructure change, we do emergency changes, right? So we will be like, okay, so what is the difference between them? First of all, the job of an auditor is to understand on a high level what is the process, and then see inside their systems what are they exactly doing, and tie what they have told and then the process. So tying all of that, right? So in your case, I think you took the example of Bitbucket. So for example, that if, let's say, somebody's using Bitbucket or GitHub to sort of, write their code, right? So the code is there. Now, if they have to, let's say, deploy it, they use, let's say, Jenkins, and they deploy it into AWS, right? And then for each change, they create a Jira ticket, for example, right? Now, my job as an auditor is to check that all the changes that this person is talking about, are these exactly the same changes that have been deployed? And are these exactly the same changes for which the ticket, let's say Jira ticket, is getting made? And then tying all these 3 knots together. So that is what we do for change management. If we see that, yes, this is exactly all of these changes are correct. Now, this is there in AWS, this is there in, Jenkins or Bitbucket. That is when our job, we consider it is as done from the compliance side of the things. But very important thing I'd like to also tell you, when people think compliance, they just think about, checking the box, right? But you should actually see compliance from compliance and security lens, right? When you will only see it from compliance lens, you will just say that, okay, this is the control, I know how to meet it, and then you'll just say this is, check in the box. When you talk about this control from the security lens, you will see, oh, you know what, how can I make this secure, right? How do I make, let's say, who is the admin of this GitHub or Bitbucket? Is this admin the right person, from the job description, and tying all of that stuff? So then you sort of start, thinking through from the security lens also. So as a career, if you take, into compliance, I think thinking through from security and compliance, both lens becomes a really balanced approach for you.
So, like, for example, like, in companies, you're saying that 3 ways to push code, like infrastructure, application, or emergency code.
Right.
So you, first of all, check the boxes in 3 categories,
right,
and dig deeper into the security of each thing.
Exactly.
Can you elaborate? How do you check how they are secure? What boxes you check in that?
Right, of course. So let's say, for the step number 1 is that I will first of all interview the person. In this case, let's say CISO, right? Chief Information Security Officer, or the security director, asking them, what do you do? Okay, so let's say they say that, in emergency changes, for example, the small example, that the approval is not required, for example, right? Okay, good. Then, what do you do in this change? So turns out that, when the code is written, okay, the code gets tested. How many people test it? There are 2 testers there that are testing the code. Okay, good. Now, when my job as an auditor is, when I go in their GitHub, I would have to check, okay, was the change that they are talking about is getting tested by at least 2 people or not? And these 2 people should be different from the person who is writing the code, in order to avoid the segregation of duties violation, right? Because, if you're writing the code and you're checking your own code, so, I mean, that's a no-no, right? So these are the things. So yeah, just to answer your question, first of all, you ask the question, and then you tie that up with all the, deep down in the systems, whatever is mentioned. And then you see that, whatever has been told is whatever is getting practiced. That's why, most of these audits are divided into 2 things: test of operating effectiveness, and then test of design. So the first one is test of design, and the second one is test of operating effectiveness. These are the 2 things that people have to check. When you say to me that I do it in 3 ways, application, infrastructure, and emergency, that means now you're telling me the design. When I have to go in your system and check that is when I'm checking the operating effectiveness part of it. That is when I tie both the things together and say that you are actually meeting this control or not meeting this control.
Interesting. So, like, this is security in terms of architecture level security.
Right. Security plus compliance.
So, like, let's say, like, if you audit a company and give them a thumbs up with a certificate. Oh, this company, let's say Uber,
qualifies.
AWS is qualified. They have gotten certificate that they are safe.
Right.
But if they do not have the certificate, what can go wrong? Can you give examples? Let's say companies who did not have, secure infrastructure and not having these certifications. These certifications are like in US called SOC 2, SOC 2, or in Europe it's called 27001, 27001. So if companies have these certifications, they're less likely to have infrastructure security breaches.
Right.
So can you share how things have gone wrong? The companies who have maybe lied that they have it, or companies that did not do it?
Well, yeah. So I think one of the companies that you just mentioned, interesting example, they had a they had a breach, and turns out that they did not tell about that breach, because whenever a breach happens,
company, if you can name it?
Uber. So whenever a breach happens in a company, you have to tell, to your customers, to your stakeholders, then, to the Fed or those state regulations if required, right? And if you do not do that intentionally, then, you pay a hefty fine or penalty for that, right? And that is what happened in the case of Uber. There was something that happened, and then, it wasn't reported. It got reported when, it was too late. And that is why there were hefty penalties. So that is the reason why I feel like, number one, I think the good part of all of these audits and framework is that you tend to follow basic standard practices, right? That that these companies will have their encryption, their multi-factor authentication, their SSO, all of these things would be in place, your security policies and everything, all of these things at least would be in place if you go through any of these type of, frameworks. I think you mentioned ISO 27001. So yeah, 27001 is primarily for, a market that wants to capture a European market. You definitely have it in US as well, but in US SOC 2 is the most famous one when you talk from the security and compliance posture.
What are the full forms? What do you mean SOC?
It's basically just called SOC 2 and ISO 27001. People don't generally use full form. They say that you want to get SOC 2 certified, or you do not want to get SOC 2 certified, and for ISO, if you want to capture America plus US market, that is when you talk about this ISO 27001. If you want to capture just the US market, if you are a SaaS-based tech company, let's say, you do a SOC 2 certification. If you are into payment gateway, then you also do PCI DSS, which is payment, into payment card industry. Okay. If you are into, let's say, governmental agency or something, you tend to do FedRAMP for that. Okay. So if you are into hospitals or healthcare, you do HIPAA for that. So you have, different certifications for different industry that is sort of monomaniacally focused on that industry.
But there's a term in security called you can never be 100% secure. Even though you could have all these controls, some companies, they can lie. Like you gave an example of Uber. Some companies, even they have these certifications, they can still have breaches. For example, United Healthcare, it was one of the most expensive breaches. They had the HIPAA certificate, but they still got breached. So can you give examples of what have you done to prevent those kind of breaches and why they are still uncontrollable?
Of course. And that is the reason why when I was mentioning that you always have to see things from the compliance and security lens. Because let's say if I'm an auditor and I come to audit you, and you just think that I just have to pass this audit, that is when you will just think from the compliance lens that, okay, you know what, I just need to pass this audit from the auditor. So I'll just show them whatever I have good in my, good security posture in my environment, and I'll hide the broken windows of the company, right? But that is what you should not do, I would say. I mean, of course, if you do not want to tell to the auditors, that's absolutely fine. But from your internal security practices, try to enhance that. Try to just cover all of your broken windows from, the new glasses, right? And how do you do that is you look things from the security lens first, and then you look it from the compliance lens, right? So when you look things from the security lens, that is when you can avoid a lot of these type of breaches, a lot of these type of, problems. But again, to your point, nothing is 100% safe. But, from a lot of these compliance frameworks, at least you can, relax yourself that, okay, all of the things that I know, all of the breaches that I already know, at least from that part, I can be covered, right? Now, something comes in, ransomware or any of that stuff comes in, and, you sort of, find yourself into some, new sort of thing, just like this virus came in, right? If something like that happens, yes, of course, that's nobody's fault, but at least try to be safe from whatever right now is available in the market, right? So that is the whole point of having compliance and cybersecurity audits.
Got it. Like, and it's a catch and mouse game. For example,
Exactly.
right now, OpenAI released agents.
Yeah.
They were like, we are entering the world where we allow agents to control our emails.
Right.
And like with email, it will go ahead, create presentations. There's a risk involved that if an email is hacky and the action could be someone sends you an email, leak my information. It actually goes and like, and a lot of things are unexpected, unimaginable, and insecure.
Yeah.
So it is a catch and mouse game. And I want to learn. So there are a lot of YC startups coming in Silicon Valley, right? So they focus on building in early ages. They don't focus on security.
Right.
So at what stage security needs to be considered for someone out there building?
Before even you think about the idea. Being very honest. And that's why you say, 0-day security. See, that is really great that a lot of these YC founders or non-YC founders for that matter, they come in and they have a lot of these, great tools that they build. But the issue with these tools are that most of these are using vibe coding, right? When you vibe code, so for example, let's say, you have to create a tool for, your YouTube channel, for example, right? You go to any LLM and you say that, create this thing for me. It'll create it. But did you check that code? Did you check the source code? Did you check the encryption inside that? Did you check the libraries that it is getting, something is getting used? No, right? All of those becomes a gap. Now, when you take that code and you put it in the functional, already functional product, and when you are making that product, what happens is that now your product itself becomes vulnerable, right? Because your starting was only vulnerable. So that is the reason why I say that security, you should consider security at the center point and then build your product around that. Believe me, you'll never be, in trouble because of compliance and security.
Interesting. So that's why it's important for us to learn the 6-step security process when you're building stuff. Can you share that out?
Yeah, sure. I think, we were talking about that. So I think, the foremost thing that you should do is that first check that do you have SSO in your organization or not, right? Single sign-on, right? What does that mean is that, people who do not know, if you have multiple tools in your organizations, you do not want to give the login ID password of, each tool to everyone, right? What you do is that you just have all of these tools probably come in and in a gateway. So for example, Okta is one of the, examples. So you have one single sign-on tool, which will allow you to have, to sort of have a gateway for all of these products that are getting used, right? So one is single sign-on that you use.
ID password for all tools.
One ID password for all the tools, that is one. Then you have your, two-factor authentication that you check in. Then you also check your encryptions, if you have things encrypted in there or not. Then you also check your security logs and your security and monitoring logs, by the way. And if you're using AWS, they have this functionality of CloudTrail and CloudWatch where you can sort of monitor that. Then you also see that you have your security policies in place or not, security or privacy policies in place or not, right? Whatever you're doing in the company, you have to just have that in a documented way, right? And then I think the fifth one that we were talking about is if you are in the tech-based SaaS system, then again, SOC 2 is really important for you in the US market, ISO 27001 if it is US plus Europe market. So you go through that certification. Now, the last one, if you are using anything with AI, if you are associated with AI in any way, shape, or form, you should use ISO 42001 because that is becoming the next big thing. And that is a framework that will keep you in check with any type of AI regulations that would come in.
Fantastic. But most importantly, I have a question here.
Sure.
So when I build application, whenever you have a server-based application, let's say you have servers of AWS in India, wherever, you have port 22. So SSH port 22 should never be kept open.
Right.
How we secure in cloud-based companies is we only allow one IP address to get port 2022, or we don't even use that port 2022. Or what we can do is you can open Azure, GCP, or Azure, or like AWS, and go there and then log in. So there are multiple ways to have port 22 secure because it's a very dangerous tool.
Exactly.
You can have malwares installed, So in the 6 steps you mentioned, where does port 22 handling comes in?
in the 6 steps that I mentioned, let me think. Let me go in the chronological order. So it was SSO was there. Then we talked about, encryption actually. So encryption is where, you talk about that, right? Where, you have your open ports or your closed ports. So that is where you sort of, see that what all ports tend to be open. Are you opening that port? What all, tends to be closed, is closed or not? That is why you have this DLP in companies, which is data loss prevention control, right? So that becomes really important for you because, as a company, you should not allow, let's say, your USBs, to be in the laptops, and, any type of endpoint leakage should not be there. So that is the reason why you have this DLP control embedded in that.
Data leakage
Data leakage protection. Yeah.
But as I came to my mind, I was creating a VPN server for fun. I created a Raspberry Pi because I came in California, and I left one in Georgia, and so what I did was I added firewall controls, disabled port 22 after creating the Raspberry Pi, and now only the ports I need for VPN, they work. So these are very important principles you should consider beforehand.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Now let's bring AI into the picture, right? So I want to know that with AI out there, how do principles change or remain the same? Like, most people say that the 6 principles you talk about, they are generally applicable for AI applications as well. So how do AI applications are made secure as compared to the past?
Well, I would say for AI, you have ISO 42001. That is the framework which is monomaniacally focused on AI. This is probably the first principle that came in, which just talks about AI. Because see, initially what happened when you had all the other compliance frameworks, they were touching a little bit on AI. This framework, when this came in, this is just talking about AI, that if you are using AI, even if it is ChatGPT for that matter, right? If you are just, let's say, you're working in a company and you're just, uploading stuff in the company, sensitive information in ChatGPT, then also you sort of fall in that category of ISO 42001. So any type of thing that you do in your company, even if you're building a product or you are, you are using AI in any capacity, ISO 42001 sort of plays a bigger role in that part, because it has a lot of control that keeps you in check, that do you have a proper training data for your AI or not, right? Do you do regular checks of your AI or not? Is your AI performing as it should or not? If it is hallucinating, these hallucinations, what is it causing? Like, if let's say, for example, healthcare or defense, right? You do not want an AI to hallucinate in healthcare, right? It would probably, there were cases where you would have seen that, it has detected like wrong, somebody who did not have cancer, AI said that, this person has cancer, and vice versa. So this becomes a bigger problem there, right?
Absolutely. Like a bigger example you mentioned is like, for example, if you think about Amazon's application approver system. I think it was 2014 you mentioned?
Amazon was 2016, I believe.
2016. When you used to apply, if like a woman is applying or any resume with women, it will auto get rejected.
Right.
Because training data doesn't have women resumes.
Exactly.
And so that's why AI becomes dangerous, because it is as good as the training data.
That's true.
So you guys follow the ISO 42001 principle.
Right.
And check those boxes
to avoid these type of problems. Right.
I see.
4 years, I think it was, you're right, actually, this was like in 2014 when Amazon actually started this. And this was started that, now Amazon was like, now we'll not be doing any, recruitment through like manual this thing, and it'll be like so automated. And for that, they had this whole thing, framed out. But then turns out that, for our 100 applications, if this algorithm was selecting 100 people, all of them were male. There was no woman. And turns out that if you are a woman, even if you are from Stanford or Harvard, you would get rejected just because, your resume says that woman inter college or woman that or woman. If the keyword woman was there, you would just automatically get rejected. And the, interesting part here was that Amazon knew about that. They realized that this is the problem. They asked their developers to fix it, but they were not able to fix it because the training data that went initially was only incorrect. So they tried, and then ultimately they had to revamp or take it out. Was one of the case. Another example you might know, Facebook, right? Bob and Alice, there was like Chatbots, exactly. 2019, I believe, there were two chatbots that Mr. Zuckerberg created to have like some negotiations between them. And these chatbots were talking in English, simple English language, right? I think there were some like ball games that they were playing and talking in simple English language. Suddenly, in front of everyone, they started talking in some random language, some shorthand language. This guy, Bob says something, and then Alice responds in some other language, and people they were like, "So, what are they talking about?" And nobody could understand it. And before the situation becomes out of control, they had to just pull the button off. These are some examples. And if I would say 42001 was there, you could at least place those checks there, those controls there, that the data that is getting trained, whatever all the pre-checks are there before a product gets completed or product gets made. At least all of those checks are completed there.
100%. Like I was talking to the YC startup yesterday as well, OpenNote. They also told me they wish that they had evaluations, like Post Hoc has evaluation systems. Like when they build the application, they couldn't get proper customer evaluation report to fix the system. They got it way later. So sooner you add all these 6 principles, the better product it becomes.
You said you worked in Microsoft also, right?
Yes.
Yeah. The Microsoft, I think you might know that chatbot that happened. I think it was in 2016 or something.
2016, yeah.
And if you see chatbot, I mean, it was invented for such a good cause, right? It was invented to interact with 19 and 20-year-old people, just to have that engagement on Twitter, just to, if somebody's writing hi, you write hello. But in 16 hours, Tay had to get pulled out because it started writing a lot of offensive and, things about Hitler or Holocaust and, a lot of conspiracy theories it started writing. Initially, Microsoft noted that, and Microsoft, started deleting the comments that it's fine, maybe it's the algorithm or something. But in 16 hours, I think it had 93,000 posts that it did. And it's not possible for you to just delete or keep on deleting, right? Most of them was offensive actually. And that is the reason why they had to just, take it down in 16 hours. Because again, poor training data, if you see here also, right? Because, humans, if you just, make a gang and try to, have some really bad data in your bot, then what is it is going to give, right?
100%.
So AI is going to just amplify whatever is the human behavior, right? If you have a positive behavior, it is going to amplify and boost it 10x. If you have a negative behavior, it is going to amplify that also. That's why you say, it's a sin or a, positive thing, right? Boon or a bane.
Absolutely. So what youngsters have to do right now, what skills they have to learn right now, so they are ready for security, not just now, but even in the next 5 years. They're ready with security, not just now with the principles you mentioned, but also against the big four: Iran, North Korea, Syria, and Russia. So these 4 countries who attack,
like that.
It's on cybersecurity wise.
Right.
How can they be future-proof for the next 5 years?
Right. So let's say if you are a student, I think there are few skills that you should develop. Okay. The first skill is you should know networks and you should know Linux. These are the 2 really big things, right? When you talk about networks, you know about packets, right? Data, information, everything is in the form of packets. You would know about packets. You'll know about IP addresses. You'll know about access lists. You'll know about a lot of VLANs and, all of these great things like in security. You learn network, you learn Linux, and then what you do, you see the cloud space, right? Because every product is getting built in cloud space. You learn AWS, GCP, Azure, Rackspace, whatever it is. In AWS, you have EC2 instances, S3 buckets, CloudTrail, CloudWatch, services inside AWS. You learn your cloud environment, you learn Linux, you learn the networks. Then you also learn Python, because Python is really important for you, right? You learn Python, then you try to develop small code, try to automate all of that, right? Then you try to go into Try Hack Me or Bug Bounty. Bug Bounty is really, really, do you know what is Bug Bounty?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So that is an interesting career, right? So if you are a student, you learn all of these skills. I would say Linux is there, networks is there, then you have Python, then you have, building macros, then you have all of your cloud environment. So it's a 3-layer approach, right? First is network Linux. The second one would be your Python and your, your automating your code. And then the third one would be your cloud environment, your, AWS, GCP or Azure, all of that. I think a mixed blend of all of this would take you to miles if you want to be secure from the cybersecurity landscape.
Interesting. And like in an AI application like LLM, connectors, MCP, server, what part of an AI application is most prone to attacks? What part is vulnerable?
Yeah, of course. So I think, are you talking about when you build an LLM or when you use LLM?
I think most people are using LLM with the application. So let's talk about using.
Yeah, I mean, if you're using an LLM, then you're taking the front end. Yeah, you're just on the front end. You're not on the back end, right? If you're using the LLM, I think you just have to be sure that whatever data you are, putting in the LLM, right? That is data should not have anything, really sensitive, right? Because if you are a company, if I work in a company, I should make sure that I'm not, putting some sensitive information in ChatGPT, for example, right? Let's say if I work in NASA or if I work in, any special, government agencies, I should definitely be cognizant about this fact that I'm not putting any sensitive data in any LLM, right? Now, if you're building an LLM, then you have to be on the back end of it, right? Then you have to make sure that whatever you're coding inside the LLM, your back end, how much secure that is, right? So, there are like two parts to it. But of course, I would say, all the parts are really vulnerable and really, it definitely needs a lot of work to probably have them to a point where they should be.
You mentioned about sensitive information. I think that's the reason people host LLM on their own server. For example, OpenRouter is an application people want in their own. If like sensitive information can go there, they handle it by hosting it and in their own networks. The biggest point where vulnerabilities are visible is sensitive data being sent to LLM. What are the other vulnerable parts of an AI agentic application? What you have seen?
Right. So even not only just AI applications, but if you talk about any vendor, vendor in general, right? Whenever I would onboard a vendor, there are 2-3 things that I'll keep in mind, that what type of access I am providing to this vendor, number one, okay? If I'm providing, like super admin access, what type of access is there, right? Then the second part is that, what type of information would be there, right? If it will be sensitive information, it will be non-sensitive information. Then we talk about the third one is that where is it hosted, to your point, right? If it is hosted in my environment or if it is not hosted in my environment. Because if it is not hosted in my environment, then it becomes, a bigger risk, right? If, then, what type of connectors are there? Is it connected through an API? Is it connected through webhooks? How is that connected, right? So all of these 3-4 things are really important when you talk about, any application, if it is AI, if it is non-AI, how is your vendor serving you is the most important question to make sure that you are not getting hacked or you're not getting breached. Because if you see the data, I think it was last year, 35% of the breaches that are happening is through the third-party vendor which are connected to your environment.
Wow.
So yeah,
third party. I know so many breaches are happening from third party as well.
Yes,
these connectors are most vulnerable part of any application. Think of
exactly, and that is the reason why you raise actually really important and a good point that if you do a hosting in the client's environment, that is actually really amazing. Because at least if the hosting is there in the environment, so at least you're sure of that the data is not going out, right? Well, in some of the cases, metadata does go out even after that, but at least in most of the cases, the data is not going out. So that becomes a really, really important thing. And that is the reason why I feel like, third party, because we raised this thing, it's a really important point that third-party vendor security becomes a really, really important point for any company. If it is a first Fortune 500 company or a non-Fortune 500 company, if you have vendors in your company, you have to make sure that vendor security is something that you should, take care of. Because in my experience, even in consulting or non-consulting, what I have seen is that people do not pay attention to vendor third-party. What do they see is, okay, we have this vendor. Okay, when is the review? The review is December 31st. We did the review. Now they forget. After that, they come next year and they just review the vendor on an annual basis just by signing, them. They do not look at that if the vendor, let's say the vendor has done SOC 2 report or ISO, right? What were the problems in their report? is these problems rectified or not? Which are the critical vendors to you? Which are the non-critical vendors to you? How is the vendor performing right now? What are the public signals of this vendor? Is this vendor having any vulnerability? Is this vendor having any breaches? What is the public sentiment of this vendor? So you have to see the vendor inside out, from the compliance aspect, from the public aspect, and from whatever exposure you have as a company. So for example, you have a company and you have a vendor AWS, right? You have to see what is the risk exposure that you as a company have from AWS. What is the risk exposure that you have from your other vendors? Has that exposure, increased, or that exposure has decreased for you? So all of these things are some things that you definitely have to, keep into consideration, because as I was telling you that, 30 to 40% of the third party of the breaches are happening through third party. And there are some important, cases in that. I mean, the top, I think in the last 5 years, SolarWinds and MoveIt, these are the two biggest breaches that happened, right? And that's the reason why, to avoid a lot of these type of breaches, millions of data was actually lost in that, right?
Totally. Like, we live in a world, soon we will be living in a world where connections will be way too many. For example, MCP is allowing connectors with thousands of applications in one place. Who knows which connector can fail at any point or be vulnerable? And that's a very important step people need to consider when they are adding so many connectors.
Absolutely.
And seeing the direction of data flow in every direction. Absolutely. And now I want to talk about, you have very good connections in Bay Area. You connect because you do auditing for Uber, AWS, the CEOs, you connected with them on LinkedIn. I want to know, connecting is one thing, but staying connected to these high net worth individuals is hard. How do you make a connection, long term with them, so that even if you reach out to them for personal help 2 years later, they will be, they'll be irresistible to reply to you?
So I'll give you maybe a rule of thumb, okay? And that is what I have learned in my whole networking experience. In my college, people used to call me in a funny way networking king. I don't know why they called it. But then I think the number one thing that I have applied is that do not ask any favor to anyone when you're meeting them for the first time. Try to give it to them. If you would give it to them, people will always remember you. That is number one. Number two, do you follow Robin Sharma by any chance? Have you heard of him? Okay. So Robin Sharma is the guy who has this book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. What he teaches is that, how you make a person feel is really important than whatever you have discussed with that person. Because let's say if I meet a CEO today, right? How I made the CEO feel is that feeling that CEO will remember till the last 50 years. He might forget my name. He might forget the conversation that I had with him, but he would always remember, there was a guy that I met in this restaurant and, how he made me feel. So that is really important. And how I made him feel is by, not asking him anything, but by sharing from my heart and giving that person. So I think the connection that you should always make is not by asking, just by giving. And believe me, if you give to a person, that thing definitely comes back to you anytime that you would need in life.
So how do you make that feeling precious? Can you give an example? Let's say you met Uber CEO. How did you make them make that experience for the CEO very memorable?
Yeah, of course. So, let's say you just have to see that in their day-to-day life, what are they doing and what is something that you can give to them, right? Without they asking you what is that thing that you can give it to them, right? So that is the only thing that you would have to target at that time, right? So maybe when I think you're talking about the Uber CEO, is just a good experience so I think I met that person from this professional, in one of the professional events, and happens that, I was just, whatever my job there was, I tried to do that in a really nice way. And after that, I think I did not ask anything. Rather than that, I just offered them, some drinks. I think it was we met at a place. I think coffee or something was there. So I just offered that. And then I think we did chit chat for 15-20 minutes, and turns out that, there were a few things that, he was looking for, some connections in India. And I luckily had those connections in India indirectly. So I tried connecting him and helping him out there.
Wow.
So that is, and then I did not, even after helping him in that, he did say thank you, but I never asked anything to him after that. But turns out that, there was something that I needed later on. I think this was 6 months after that. And he knew about it, and then he helped me out in that.
Wow.
So not only just like one person, any person that you meet, if you cannot give that person anything, just try to ask that person about his journey or her journey, right? People like to talk about their journey, and you get a lot of, lessons from them rather than asking them something. I mean, what can you ask them? If you can ask something materialistic to them, right? But when you talk to them about their journey, and when they tell you about that, you're getting something which is more than something, an object or a thing, right?
Fantastic. Now, this is a great way to, it's not, so basically you're telling that networking is not about following every few months and staying in touch on their social media. It's about just making the experience very memorable, that they don't forget.
Exactly.
And my last question will be, what trends do you follow in cybersecurity to be a better analyst, better consultant, and better security engineer?
Well, I think right now I'm following AI more than cybersecurity because it's a mixed blend. It's an amalgamation of AI plus cybersecurity. So that's why I'm just sort of following the AI trend, where this whole, AI landscape is going, this blockchain and, all of this, like the whole landscape of AI plus cybersecurity, the intersection of that, where that is going. I'm actually trying to follow that. In fact, I've been following that since the last, 10 years, more than that. So, initially we used to have all of these, security things on Excel sheet, as I was mentioning you, right? And then I think in compliance, Vanta was one of the first companies that came in. Vanta is like a compliance automation tool. I think this was back in 2016 when Vanta company came in and they said that they will automate compliance. Vanta was done by Christina, I remember, was the founder. Christina plus Eric Goldman, they both actually created Vanta. And then from there, then HyperProof, very good security, Tugboat, a lot of companies came in after that. 5, 6, 7, 7, 8 companies came in. Drata was there, Sprinter was there. So that is when I saw this whole landscape changing of cybersecurity, right? From Excel to automation, maybe 50% automation, but at least automation, right? Now I would say we are at 70 to 80% of automation. I know a lot of products claim that they are 100% automated. I would say right now it is, we still have to see that. We are yet to come. Everything is, work in progress, but I think that landscape was really important. So I've been following that whole automation landscape. That's why I said AI plus compliance. And now also it's like really interesting times to see, compliance, and then, all of this happening in AGI or super AGI and whatever has been going on in that. So yeah, I mean, it's just a mixed blend of AI plus compliance, but, a little bit more domination on the AI is what I'm following to, just be aware on day to day for cybersecurity.
Fantastic. In your journey, if you have to pinpoint few things that have made you who you are today,
right?
Becoming a senior consultant, talking to the highest level of security staff in big companies like Uber, AWS. Can you connect the dots backwards and point those examples that have made you who you are today, those decisions?
Right, of course. I would say one was hunger for sure. Hunger to research and hunger to read and hunger to, explore, I would say. And then reading a lot. I think reading has helped me a lot, by the way. Following a lot of like professional and personal development, strategies and reading books on them. And then reading about, as I was mentioning, that my first journey to start for MBA was this book, Beyond the MBA Hype of Samir Kamath, because there was nobody in my family who was abroad back in that time. So I couldn't take that advice from anyone else. And that is when I found this book. And from the book, I think somewhere they mentioned about GMAT Club. So I went on the internet, I found GMAT Club, and that's when I started connecting to people. Then I knew, oh, there is also a coaching for these things. Then I, knew about the books that were there. Then I read about it, and that's how I came here, into compliance and cybersecurity. But I would say, yeah, just having that hunger in you and having, just reading and, keeping yourself up to date on that aspect would be like really important. But yeah, hunger is something that you should definitely have. I mean, in the night, if you're sleeping and you're dreaming about something, I'm not saying about cybersecurity. Nobody dreams about cybersecurity. It's really boring, by the way. But if you just dream about, being excelling in your field, that is the only thing that you need, right? Whatever field you are in. So that is the advice I would say for youngsters.
Wow. So that's a great way to end the podcast. Thank you so much, Nishant, for joining us here.
Thank you.
It was great learning a lot from you. I learned a lot from you, and I hope these lessons add a lot of value to all the people watching.
Thank you so much for having me, Arnold.
Thank
Have
you.
a nice
Pleasure.